Hi, my name is Philipp Jorgensen. We are here in Germany. That's in northern Schleswig-Holstein on our farm. We are a conventional farm. We manage 200 hectares, also have pigs, and a year ago we decided on the GST Biostar 12 meter to prepare our arable farming for the upcoming challenges with less crop spraying. We actually came to use the rotary harrow because in 2017 and 2018 we had a very wet autumn, very wet sowing conditions, and in the spring we had severe problems with soil crusting and the emergence of the grain. So we borrowed a rotary harrow from a neighboring organic farmer friend. By borrowing the rotary harrow, we actually hoped that we could break up the crust and maybe stimulate tillering a bit, which worked very well. Then we bought the rotary harrow in the background from GST. Now we actually do 2 passes with the harrow in the spring, as soon as it's possible, to break up the crust, aerate the soil a bit, work in fertilizer, and stimulate tillering. And especially now, with these dry summers, we also think it's important, or we believe it really helps, if there's a small crumb layer on top that breaks the capillaries, where there's dry, loose soil on the surface and it keeps the moisture underneath. So weed control actually wasn't the reason we bought the machine, because as a conventional farm, we actually had other priorities. But in fact, this spring, we didn't have to use a single herbicide. Harrowing twice was completely sufficient, which surprised us a bit, but especially because this is new for us and we still have crop protection. We see the advantage in that. We can also practice, we can allow ourselves to make mistakes, especially when it comes to harrowing and the timing of it. But it actually worked out very well and we didn't have to use any herbicide. The yield loss really surprised us. It's actually only in the tractor tracks. So the better you equip your tractor, whether with dual tires or by letting a lot of air out of large tires, the better it is. That's actually the only way you can influence the yield loss, because the rotary harrow itself doesn't significantly damage the plants, and the ones that do get pulled out during cultivation are usually shallowly sown plants that wouldn't have produced the highest yields anyway, so the losses are minimal. Yes, the real challenge is definitely timing it right. We have relatively heavy soils here, and if they're too wet, we create too many tracks, which means too much loss. If it gets too dry and we can drive better with the tractor, the problem is that the harrow doesn't work as well because it just skips over the surface. However, it should be mentioned that the GST Biostar can press each star into the ground individually with a spring, so even if you've missed the ideal timing, you can still achieve a very good result by applying a bit more pressure. The quality of the machine is absolutely great. We haven't had any problems, nothing has damaged. And yes, at first we couldn't believe that even the stars themselves wouldn't have any issues with stones. And hitting stones, let's say of a fairly moderate size, at 24, 25 km/h is definitely something that makes you think. But GST is so convinced of his star, they gave a guarantee on that. If a star breaks, I'll get a new one from them. And yes, we tried it out this year and it's true, the harrows or the stars just bounce up and nothing happens. Everything stays intact. We run the system with RTK because especially at 25 km and with a 12 meter working width, it's pretty difficult to make proper passes without following the tracks. The Biostar also runs very, very smoothly, doesn't rock, and especially thanks to being attached to the 3-point hitch, it's very maneuverable at the headland, so you save a lot of time and can quickly get into corners or smaller areas. Each star is mounted individually, so especially in our hilly terrain, the harrow can adapt very, very well to the ground and leaves a very uniform working pattern behind. This year we also started out relatively early at the very first possible date in order to aerate the soil and of course to break up the crust. We also had some night frosts afterwards, but they actually didn't harm the crop. We believe the difference compared to a normal weed harrow is that the plants are barely disturbed and most of the work happens in the soil.